Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight, it was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump just continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you with Toad Stool Sports. It is Wednesday, January 14th. Probably should have had a winning day last night, man. We went 2-2. Not happy about it. College basketball was 0-2 last night. Hockey was good, baby. I got my Utah Mammoth jersey for the occasion here. Mr. Keller, Keller is his name. I always forget. I'm like, Kessel? Wait, no, that's the guy who left the Bruins. What? Keller, yeah. So, yeah, we should have had a winning day last night, though. I'm not happy about it. Put my headphones away here. My mic cord is not behaving here. I apologize, man. My setup is a little bit off from the way that I want it right now. But yes, Minnesota was the main sticking point last night as they had a double-digit lead with like 10 minutes to go in that game against Wisconsin. First half would have won. I don't really do halves, but you get Wisconsin in that major letdown spot. It kind of makes sense that the letdown would hit earlier in the game. So a first half wager did make sense for Minnesota. That would have gotten the job done. But they blew the game, man. Double-digit lead, low-scoring game, the way that you want it with Minnesota, and then they blow it. They fall behind by margin, and then they lose, and they miss by 1 point or whatever. I mean, come on, man. Losing by 3. I'm pissed off about that. And then Oklahoma was never close. It was the wrong side. I apologize. I thought it was a horrible spot for Florida. Sometimes you're just wrong, man. What can you do? That was a wrong one. And then hockey was good. Like I said, we added the Bruins. The Bruins got the job done 3-0. And then a blowout win from Utah as well. 6-1, I believe, was the final in Utah. So we did get those right. Mr. Pinsey, what's up? Kyle, what's up, man? Tyson, what's up, everybody? Yeah. 10% on the money line. Yeah, you went 10% on the puck line. Okay. All right. I don't usually recommend that. I mean, yeah, like I say, when it's a dog, you're basically saying that you think that they have a better chance to win outright than what the odds makers are giving you for the most part if you're playing the dog. So if it's a dog that's like less than double digits is kind of my rule in football and basketball, then I would say 10% on the money line, 90% of the bet on the spread. If it's more than double-digit favorite, then I start saying probably put like between 1% and 3% on the money line, just so you have something, just so if it hits, you're not like totally pissed off. And I still think if you're doing your handicapping right, I think you still win more often than you don't. Plus that really small amount on that huge dog, you're not losing that much by doing it. So that's how I do it. I have one hockey play today, and I almost went puck line with it. It is an underdog, though, and it was so close to my threshold that I was just like, nah, let's just go money line on it. So that's what we're going to do today. And I have 4 college basketball plays. And we will not have any NBA today. I don't like the NBA board, so even though it is my best sport historically, and just recently it continues to be good. All right, we can get into college basketball here. There's a lot to do here. Drayson, what's up, man? Tower Gang ended due to irreconcilable differences between Top and Clint. I'm not happy about it. I wanted the show to continue. I don't know, man. I thought we definitely had something there. I'm sad, obviously. It's just if there's any way that it continues, it'll have to be probably just the OG lineup of it. But I don't even know if that's going to happen because everybody's just kind of off doing their own thing now. So I have no idea, man. But if you watch the last episode of Tower Gang, you'll probably see what happened. Although some of it might have been in the post show behind the paywall. But yeah, I wasn't even sure what was going on. Like I thought they were kind of just messing with each other, and then I don't know. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I mean, I loved doing it. So yeah, I don't really have that outlet anymore. Although I am on Losercast. You can check out Losercast. We had an episode last night. That is the comedy panel podcast that I'm on right now with Tyler, the Tower Gang producer, is on it, and it's the brainchild of Leighton from Outlawed Thoughts, and we got a couple other guys on it as well. All right, let's get into this board today here, man. We have a lot of games that are early today, earlier than 7 p.m. at least. There's a bunch of like 6 and 6:30 Eastern games here, starting with an A10 matchup between VCU and Rhode Island at Rhode Island. 6 p.m. on CBS Sports. I first looked at this and I'm like, VCU has got to be in some sort of hangover spot, kind of, because they came off that huge game against St. Louis and they lost the game. So I thought they were going to be hung over after that game, and it seems like they were. They lost to George Mason, who is atop the A10 right now, although I don't think George Mason is actually the best team in the A10. And in fact, I think VCU is actually better than they are, but that was a road game, a tough spot for VCU. They took another loss. Now, how do they respond to that? Because that was another big game. It's a second straight road game, third road game in 4 games. Rhode Island not doing very well this year. It seems like maybe it could be another hangover here for VCU. Rhode Island likely gets up for the game, although Rhode Island did just pull off a nice upset on the road at Davidson. I assume that was an upset. So they're coming off of that. I don't think they're going to have a letdown facing VCU, though, the returning conference champs from last year, and that ended a long, well, not a long, but a 3-game loss streak for Rhode Island, and that was their first conference win. So there is the argument that maybe that will give them some momentum moving forward here. So I probably lean to Rhode Island in this one. The money is kind of disagreeing with that. VCU is a 4.5-point road favorite here, 67% of the tickets. We see 99% of the cash right now on VCU, although I don't think that's really accurate. But I would probably lean towards taking the points in that one, but I have no strong opinion on that. I have a somewhat stronger opinion on Army at Holy Cross in the Patriot League. Oh, God. Army, not one of the better teams in the Patriot League. Let's just put it that way. They're, in fact, bad enough that they're a pretty big underdog at Holy Cross here. Army is coming off 3 straight losses after opening the conference slate with a win against Lehigh, and we'll talk about Lehigh in a minute. Army, last game, they took a loss to Boston University. They're staying in Massachusetts, so it makes it, I guess, a little bit easier. Not that Army's that far away anyway, but makes the travel spot a little bit easier here. They do have American up next, which they're one of the better teams in the conference, but I don't know that that's going to be a look ahead because when you're losing every game, you're going to probably show up and try to win a game. Meanwhile, I think Holy Cross is probably in a bad spot here because they just beat American on the road. That was a pretty big upset for Holy Cross. Probably about an 8-point underdog is what Holy Cross was in that game. So I could see Holy Cross being hung over after that game. I lean to Army in this game, although it is interesting that Holy Cross is a pretty substantial favorite here. Well, they're down from 6.5 to 5.5 now, so the money, the early market move seems to agree with me on taking the points with Army in this one, and that is what I would do. It's a low total as well, 143.5, so it makes more sense to take points when there's a low total like this. But that is what I would do, although One thing that kind of has me pausing is that, like, why would Holy Cross be this big of a favorite when both teams have horrible records, right? So that does make me hesitate a little bit. That, like, just the number looks so weird. It almost makes me want to lean to Holy Cross, but the situation pretty much says Army to me, so that's the way I would lean in that one. The next game up is the game that I actually have a play on. First best bet of the day. Comes in early. We have nothing on the 7 p.m. slate, by the way. We have a 6 p.m., and then we have some later games. We're going to be on Boston University. My guys, my family, alma mater, not mine, but like everybody in my family pretty much. We're going to go with BU on the money line in this one. You can find them somewhere around 2.5. If it gets to 2.5, I'd probably just say lay the point spread instead at 2.5. But I found a good money line on it. Any money line that's kind of in like the minus 130 range, I would probably just do that. And as I talk about in college basketball, usually when you have a favorite of -1, -1.5, or -2, it actually is more advantageous to lay a money line price on that favorite. So just reiterating that. The total is pretty low at 141, so laying points, I don't love laying points when the total is that low, but this is a horrible spot for Lehigh. Lehigh, I mean, they're not one of the better teams in the conference, but the spot is just awful. Lehigh just pulled off an upset at Colgate. Colgate is usually one of the best teams in the Patriot, and they are again. They're one of the top couple of teams in this conference. Lehigh went into their place and beat them. That was a huge game for Lehigh. Now they have a second straight road game, third road game in 4 games, having to go up to Boston again. And up next in a few days, they play Navy, and Navy is the team that's atop the conference. So I think this is a sandwich spot, man, for Lehigh here. So I don't like it at all. Meanwhile, for Boston University, as I pointed out, they just beat Army, and they're staying at home. So I think they just have a little bit of momentum right now. So I like how this sets up a lot better for Boston University here. And then I think I did look at the conference tournament from last year, because I usually look at that to see, well, what happened in the conference tournament last year. But in this case, there wasn't a whole lot going on. These teams did not meet up in the conference tournament last year, so I don't think that matters. As far as Lehigh is concerned, though, hold on. Lehigh, I was looking at Lehigh, never mind. Yeah, so there's not really much to see as far as that's concerned. So that's basically out of the equation. It does look like BU ticked up from 2 to 2.5 early. We still don't really have a market read on this, but my situational read is Lehigh's in a horrible spot. We're going to lay it with Boston University, or lay a money line price. That's the first play up. All right. Iowa and Purdue, Big Ten Network. This is an interesting one. Number 5, Purdue, of course. Purdue is a legit team. Ken Baum's got them in the top 3, actually. He has them number 3 in his power ratings. In my preseason preview, I said Purdue was going to be a title contender because they're bringing back all their guards again and whatever. But obviously, we're in the middle of the season here, so now we're talking about what is the spot. Now, Iowa has dropped out of the rankings, though Iowa's still a legit team. Ken Baum has them in the top 25 still. Both of these teams played a slow pace, so that's not going to really throw either team off. Iowa is coming into this off a pretty difficult game against Illinois, though. So, yeah, Iowa's going to want to get up for a game against Purdue as well, but they're going to have to put in that effort 2 games in a row, and they're going to have to go from facing, well, I was going to say Illinois is a fast-paced team, but they're not actually that fast anymore. So they're actually playing 2 somewhat slower-paced teams in a row, which is interesting. But it's a tough spot for Iowa, I think, just because they're playing 2 big games in a row. Purdue is coming off a somewhat lackluster effort against Penn State, where they caught Penn State in a bad spot, too. Penn State had gone all out and almost pulled off an upset against Michigan, I want to say. Was it Michigan? Michigan's faltering recently, man. Yes, it was. So I thought Penn State was in a bad spot, but Purdue, I don't know, man, if they just went through the motions or what, but it was not a good game for Purdue. They won by 8. It was just a get-in, get-out type of effort for Purdue. Maybe Purdue shows up with more effort here. This is not a bad spot for Purdue, though, so I think I actually prefer Purdue in this game, even though I tend to be Mr. Underdog, but not always. You can't always be Mr. Underdog. Purdue is a 10.5-point favorite here. It is a low total, of course, because it's expected that both teams are going to slow this thing down. So I don't really hate the idea of an under in this game either. But Purdue does shoot very efficiently, so they're probably like the highest scoring, slow-paced team out there, Purdue, because they just find good shots and they nail them at a high rate. But, yeah, I would probably lean to Purdue minus the points in that one. Garrett, what's up, man? Yes, North Carolina. I don't have a strong opinion on that one. You're on Kansas. Good for you. I don't buy into the do factor, but if you watched my show last night, you saw what my opinions were on that. I leaned to Kansas in that game. I just thought the main factor was that Kansas was coming off a bad loss to West Virginia, and I thought they were probably looking ahead. And Kansas is definitely really good at home, but that was being factored into the line. And a lot of these like small ranked road favorites have not been coming through this year. So I had my concerns with it, although of course it won and both of my plays didn't. Kansas is rarely an underdog at home, though, by the way. That was only, I think, the fourth time Kansas was an underdog at home since 2019. And I think prior to 2019, they hadn't been a home underdog for like 2 decades. But Kansas, last year they were down, as we know. They had their lowest seed in the tournament, I think maybe in program history, or for a long, long time. It's hard to win on the road, but, I mean, that's factored into the line, though. But, again, I agreed with Kansas just because Kansas was coming off that bad performance. That was kind of my handicap there. The Big South, we have a pretty good game between High Point and Winthrop. High Point is basically the dominant team in this conference, but maybe we should hold that a little bit because look at the line in this game. High Point 16-3 on the season. Winthrop 11-8, yet Winthrop is favored in this game at home. So that's got to give you a little bit of pause, man. Like, what is going on here? Why is Winthrop a favorite? Well, the odds makers are telling you there isn't actually that much of a gap between these two teams, although I think Ken Baum probably has High Point winning this game by a few points. So the line does seem a little bit off to me, although Ken Baum, it's all analytics, so he's not factoring in like the real current situation. And like, I don't know if there's any personnel missing in this game or anything like that. But at the very least, you know Winthrop is going to come in with a huge effort in this game, man, because High Point won the conference last year. Winthrop coming off an easy win over USC upstate. And I believe Winthrop, I think they got knocked out of the tournament last year by High Point as well. Yeah, and that might have been I think that was in the conference final too. High Point beat them in the conference final. So this is a pretty major revenge spot for Winthrop for losing in the conference final. They haven't seen High Point since then, even though the personnel was, of course, different, especially with the transfer portal situation. But still, it's going to be a big game for Winthrop's program, man. And High Point just came off an overtime win against Charleston Southern. Although I think Charleston Southern is not as good as their record looks. I don't think they're as good as Winthrop. That was still a pretty big game for High Point because Charleston Southern was up in the top few in this conference going into that game. So it was still a pretty big game. So High Point's having to play 2 straight fairly big road games. So I would lean to Winthrop in this game. I'm not going to make the play, but High Point actually initially flipped from a 1.5 dog to a 1.5 point favorite, which I do think High Point still should be a favorite in this game, but the money is coming in on Winthrop according to the percentages. And again, I do agree with it. 67% of the tickets are on High Point and 78% of the cash on Winthrop. So yeah, I would agree with Winthrop. It's a slight lean for me in that one. Butler at Xavier for some Big East action on Fox Sports. I don't have a whole lot to say about this game. Butler is coming in off 3 straight losses, though, so you might see a hungrier Butler team here as they only have 1 win in conference. They kind of need one, and Xavier actually has 2 now. We had Xavier. They caught Providence in a really nice spot. Providence, a horrible spot for Providence. It was a sandwich spot, big time for Providence. So Xavier was a winner that I gave out on the show. Now, that did break a losing streak for Xavier, so that could give them some new momentum coming into this game. But I don't know. I could see Butler coming in here as the hungrier team, man. I could see arguments for both sides in this one. So there's no way I'm going to have anything as for a play in this game or anything. It looks like the money is somewhat coming in on Butler as they've moved up from a pick'em to 1.5 with juice, actually. 71% of the tickets, 75% of the cash on Butler. I'll slightly lean to Butler as well. I just think they're the hungrier team for a win right now, but that's not anything good enough for me to do anything with that game. But that's a very weak opinion for me on that one. You're going with Devin Booker over on assists. All right, what's the reasoning? I don't know. I'm not into the props really, so I don't know what really goes on with the props. Although I think if you're going over assists, you're going to want like a situation where you think that he's going to be like, there's got to be a reason why you think he's going to be dishing it out more. Like he's got more scorers surrounding him, whatever, because he is the highest scoring player on Phoenix, right? Or maybe it's going to be that the opponent is going to be like defending against his. Oh, you got it last night. All right. Oh, yeah. That was last night. Phoenix was playing. Yeah, they're not playing tonight. Phoenix played. I got that game wrong on the side. It wasn't a play for me, but it was Phoenix and Miami, I believe is what it was. Ole Miss is playing at Georgia. Ole Miss just beat Missouri. I don't even remember who was favored in this game, to be honest. Let me see. Yeah, it was the line was right around to pick 'em. Ole Miss was a slight favorite in that one. Decent win for Ole Miss, just in that they're going to at least have some momentum coming into this one. I don't think they're going to be overconfident or anything like that. They do play their in-state rival, Mississippi State, next. That's always a big game, but I think that they're not going to overlook Georgia, though. I mean, they're playing a ranked Georgia team here that's close to the top of the SEC right now. Georgia is coming off a win at South Carolina. Decent win for Georgia to bounce back. This was a back-and-forth game, man, and Georgia was a favorite in this one, so they were expected to win. Georgia, the worry with them is that they have a look ahead here to Arkansas, which might be the biggest situational factor here potentially, even though I think the biggest situational factors are actually what just happened rather than what's going to happen next, because that's all mental, and it's easier to overcome the mental than the physical toll that the previous game just took on you, which is physical and mental. This game, I have a hard time with this game. Wait, I'm looking at South Carolina. That's not what I want. That's a different game, which I will talk about as well. This is Ole Miss and Georgia, yeah. I'll lean to Ole Miss plus the points here. Georgia, 86% of the tickets, 73% of the cash on them. They are up to an 11-point favorite, but they look public, which doesn't surprise me. Ole Miss, they're a team that plays slow. The public doesn't want anything to do with Ole Miss usually anyway, but they're also down this year, so public is going to be all over Georgia, a faster-paced team, and they are, and less of the money is. Totals at 161, because you kind of have to with Georgia being a really fast-paced team, but maybe Mississippi will be able to slow it down a little bit. It is easier to slow the game down, although the better team and the home team usually are able to control the pace, though, as well. So if Georgia is able to speed this thing up, Ole Miss might be in for a long night in that one. So I think it's really going to depend on which team can kind of overcome that. That's on ESPNU at 7 p.m. I would lean to taking the points with Ole Miss, though. Again, just because I kind of like the slow-down team getting a ton of points, but that's really most of the angle that I have there. Georgia plays ludicrously fast, by ludicrous speed. Georgia at number 2 in the country in tempo, which I don't think that's a good thing, to be honest. Once you get into the tournament, if you're trying to make a run in the NCAA tournament and you're going that fast, that's just, it's a problem, man. So that is something that worries me about Georgia later on. We have Illinois State and Indiana State in the Missouri Valley. Missouri Valley does give us some situations, and I do have one play in the Missouri Valley. And when I first looked at this, I'm like, oh, Illinois State's going to be in a huge bounce back here because they just lost at Valpo, which is pretty ugly. But then they also followed that up with a loss to Illinois Chicago, who I think got into little brother mode and got the win there as an underdog at Illinois State as well. I'm like, Illinois State has got to show up for this game against Indiana State in a bounce-back spot here after an ugly loss. And then I'm looking at it more, and I'm like, I don't know. Because Illinois State has Bradley, Northern Iowa, and Belmont, and Murray State all on deck. So those are all opponents that they could be looking ahead to, whereas Indiana State's been awful this year. And Illinois State already beat Indiana State by 20 at home, so they might even come into this thinking it's easy to beat Indiana State. So I do have my hesitations about that thought. Then I went over and I looked at the Indiana State side. They just had a bad loss at home to Evansville. Evansville is worse than Indiana State. They're the worst team in the conference. Evansville got into little brother mode. And I think it was a bad spot for Indiana State because they'd almost pulled off the upset of Drake in the prior game. And they had played Northern Iowa the game before that, too. And they had Illinois State, Murray State, Bradley, and Drake again all on deck. So that was basically a sandwich for Indiana State. So both teams almost look like they're in spots where they should bounce back. But the more I think about it, I think Indiana State is probably the way I would lean in this one because there are more negatives to Illinois State's situation here. Illinois State's down from 6.5 to 5.5 there. So the initial move on the line does seem to agree with me on that. I would lean to Indiana State plus the points. A10 action, we got St. Bonaventure at St. Joseph's, the Battle of the Saints. St. Bonaventure's coming off a pretty bad loss at home to Fordham, man. So I think they are going to be in bounce-back mode after that. They were coming off pretty big games against VCU and Richmond, so maybe you can kind of explain that. Fordham maybe considers themselves to be a little brother in the state of New York because they are both in New York, even though Fordham is in New York City and St. Bonaventure is upstate. But that's a bad loss for Bonaventure. They were a big favorite in that one. Meanwhile, St. Joe's just pulled off a road upset at Richmond, and they have VCU and Dayton on deck. So they might consider those to be bigger games here, man, as we're looking at a St. Bonaventure team that's fallen off to the point where they don't even have a conference win yet. So I think St. Bonaventure is definitely going to be showing up, trying to get a conference win. They're not as bad as their conference record looks at the very least. I like St. Bonaventure in this game. They actually dropped from a 2-point favorite to a 1-point favorite, but 67% of tickets, 76% of the cash on them, on the Bonnies. The Bonnies against the Joes. No, it's the Bonnies against the Hawks. The Joes actually look like they're on Bonaventure with the pros here, so I don't know. But yeah, I would lean to the Bonnies in that one. All right. And again, if you want me to talk about any of these other games, I can, but some of these games I found to be less interesting. East Carolina at South Florida had some interesting components to it. East Carolina just lost a close game at home to UAB. UAB was a pretty big favorite in that game. East Carolina is not one of the better teams in this American Conference, and they started out playing some fairly difficult American opponents as well, and South Florida is also one of them. If you saw my bracketology, I actually have South Florida winning that conference, winning this conference right now in my bracketology. East Carolina having to go on the road here off a pretty difficult game. Could be difficult for them, but South Florida is also in a difficult spot. They just beat North Texas and Tulsa after they played, I believe, an overtime game against UAB at double overtime. So South Florida's had a difficult run as well, and they play Wichita and UAB again in revenge next, and then FAU, and then Tulane, and then Temple, and all of those teams are near the top of the conference. So I think South Florida is actually in the worst spot here. I think it's debatably a sandwich spot that they're in here, although I don't know. Well, Wichita being their next opponent is, I guess, the opponent they're least going to be looking ahead to out of all those upcoming opponents. So maybe I shouldn't quite say that. You can see why I'm not on this game, but I would probably look towards taking the points with East Carolina, but I don't think I could do that either, with them not being in a particularly good spot either. So I worry about that from both sides there. Peacock and NBC Sports has Colorado and Cincinnati at 7 p.m. Colorado, they covered for us. They made a huge comeback in the game against Texas Tech, man, on Saturday, I believe. Colorado did not go away in that game, so they put in a full effort in that game at home, and they almost pulled off the upset of Texas Tech, and now they got to travel to Cincinnati. I think the spot looks pretty bad. Cincinnati, a winless team in the conference. It's possible Colorado's paying more attention to West Virginia because that's who they play next on this 2-game trip, and they have really all bigger opponents upcoming. Kansas, UCF, who just dropped out of the rankings, Iowa State, etc. So I think this is a pretty bad spot for Colorado. It's just, I don't know if I can get there with Cincinnati. Cincinnati just had a pretty difficult game at UCF where I said I leaned to Cincinnati in that game, and they covered, but they lost by 1. That was a pretty big game. And Cincinnati has Iowa State and then Arizona on deck as well. So it almost looks like they're kind of in a sandwich spot here. However, I don't think a Cincinnati team that's still looking for their first conference win in a winnable game here. I don't think they're going to overlook Colorado, who does have a decent record. So I do lean to Cincinnati in this game. And looking at the number here, I mean, the number seems just crazy to me. You want to talk about, a winnable game. How can an 8-8 Cincinnati team who's 0-3 in conference be an 8.5-point favorite against a 12-4 team, right? That line looks so suspicious. Odds makers are telling you Cincinnati's actually the better team. They've faced the way more difficult schedule so far, so I think Cincinnati is probably the right side in that game, especially given how suspect that line looks. The money seems to agree. 64% of tickets, 86% of the cash on Cincinnati. I would lean that way, but you are asking them to lay a pretty substantial price here with a low total of 149. Cincinnati plays fast, but they are extremely lopsided towards defense, and they can't score even though they play fast, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to cover a number like this. But I would agree with the Cincinnati side in that game. All right. What other games do we want to talk about here? I don't know. Usually I'm going to talk about like most of the big conference games. There were so many of them. I don't know. I mean, Pitt at Georgia Tech on the ACC network. I try to talk about the TV games as well. This is a pretty ugly game, though. They're just not good, man. They are coming off 3 straight losses, though, and they still don't have an ACC win. So I think they are going to be motivated to try to get one, even though they have Louisville up next. Pitt is in a position where they can't really overlook anybody. Georgia Tech's coming off a pretty close performance against Miami. They lost by 10, but if you dig into that box score, they played pretty tough in that game. That game was pretty close down the stretch. So I think the spot does set up a little bit worse for Georgia Tech, and they might have a look ahead as well because they got NC State, Clemson on deck. So I would probably lean to Pitt in this game, even though it's real ugly. They're also the favorite on the road, and you got to think, well, why would that be? Again, the odds makers are telling you they're the better team, even though they're 7-9. Georgia Tech's 10-7. The public's got to look at this and wonder what is going on there. Like, how could Pitt possibly be a road favorite in that game? But again, odds makers are telling you what you need to know. Pitt is somewhat better team according to them. They must have played the more difficult schedule, which I think if you dig into it, that will be the case. 67% of tickets, 94% of the cash on Pitt. They're up from 1 to 1.5. I agree with that market read in that one. I agree with the Pitt side in that game. We have a decent MAAC matchup here between St. Peter's and Quinnipiac. St. Peter's has worked themselves up close to the top of the conference, man. 5-1 in conference. They just delivered Merrimack their first conference loss. That was a good win for St. Peter's. Now they're on the road against Quinnipiac. I think both teams are going to show up, although St. Peter's is going to have to put in that amount of effort 2 games in a row after beating Merrimack, where Quinnipiac is coming off an easier game. They beat Sacred Heart, and I think they almost lost that game, too. Sacred Heart was winning that game in the second half for quite a while in that game, so Quinnipiac had a scare in that game, actually. Maybe they were even looking ahead. Like, Sacred Heart just went completely silent at the end of that game and, like, didn't score again for the final 3 minutes. They went on stretches of, like, 3 minutes apiece where they only scored 1 bucket. I think they scored 1 bucket in the final 6 minutes of that game. Really ridiculous. I expect both teams to show up, but I think Quinnipiac has a little bit of an easier time of it here based on what they did in their last game. So I kind of lean to Quinnipiac here. The money is not agreeing with me on that one. Quinnipiac is down from 8 to 7 here. 50% of the tickets on both sides. 67% of the cash on St. Peter's on the Peacocks. But I kind of disagree, although it is going to be a little bit more difficult for Quinnipiac to cover a 7-point number like that when the total's 142.5, which is pretty low. So all things to keep in mind there in that one. Dirty Sock, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. All right, and I'm trying to just talk about like the more interesting, like bigger games. Niagara and Canisius is the Battle of Buffalo, for what it's worth. These two teams have a rivalry. They are close in proximity. They do not like each other. Canisius was just absolutely abysmal last year, and Niagara was a little bit better than that last year, but now the tables have turned, and Canisius is actually better than Niagara this year. slightly. If we look at what happened last year, Niagara beat Canisius both games. So I think Canisius will be a little bit more motivated here because it is a rivalry. It's double revenge for Canisius. Canisius just got drilled by Iona, man. Iona's pretty solid, but 74-48. And that was at Iona, but still, that was a really, really ugly loss. So I think Canisius will be extra motivated coming off of that horrible loss as well. Whereas Niagara, they're coming off a closer loss to Manhattan, but they are playing a third straight game on the road here. They also got pretty much handled by Iona at Iona the game before that, although Canisius looked worse against Iona, so maybe some people will come in and handicap this and think taking the points makes sense. I would actually probably lay it, but the money seems to disagree with me on this. 75% of the tickets, 74% of the cash on Canisius. They're down from 3.5 to 3. I don't really agree with that move, though. Slightly into Canisius in that one, but I just figured I would mention it because it is the Battle of Buffalo. Dirty Sock, did I say good morning? I don't even remember. Dude, I don't remember anything anymore. I have amnesia. Short-term amnesia. We have a pretty big game here in the Sunbelt between Southern Miss and Troy. Both these teams are up near the top of the conference. Troy won the conference last year. I think both teams are going to come into this game with motivation here. Southern Miss just beat UL Monroe. Who cares? Troy coming into this game off of a easy win over Louisiana. So Troy bounced back from that loss at Arkansas State fine with that win over Louisiana. But Troy does have Arkansas State again next in revenge after Arkansas State got revenge against them for the conference final last year. That is a big game, but I don't really see Troy overlooking Southern Miss in this one. Troy's a 9-point favorite here, although 9 is a little bit of a big number when you see that the total's only 147.5. Troy does not play fast. So what do we even want to do with this game? I don't know. Obviously, the odds makers are telling you Troy's the better team. Ken Bum, let me see. Ken Bum has Southern Miss barely cracking into the top 200, has them as a bit more of a lucky team. They're very bad offensively. Troy usually is, I'm used to Troy being defensive-minded, but they're actually a little bit better offensively than defensively. Troy is the team with more balance, though, and they are the better team. You know, I guess I would probably lay it with Troy, but I don't love it, really. Troy does play slow, again, so that is a little bit of a concern when you're laying that amount of points. Winning day, hell yeah, because you parlayed the Mammoth. I got them right here, man. Everybody makes fun of their name and their mascot and their jersey, but come on, man, I like this. I like this, whatever you want to call it, sky blue, powder blue, whatever. I like it, man. All right, let me see. But yes, my college basketball was ass yesterday, though, and I play everything as an individual play, so my day was slightly losing. ESPN2 has an SEC matchup on at 7 between Auburn and Missouri. Two teams that are probably not performing as well as they would want. Auburn, I mean, they're really in a transition period, though, in Auburn, with Bruce Pearl's son taking over. A lot of their players from last year left. Auburn is coming off a pretty nice win over Arkansas, man. Pretty satisfying to beat a ranked John Calipari coached Arkansas team by 22 points. So Auburn maybe could be in a little bit of a letdown here, having to go on the road to Missouri. Missouri has done some things at home, like they beat Florida at home, which was a pretty good win there. That was, I believe, their only conference home game so far. And they actually pulled off a big road upset at Kentucky as well. So I don't know exactly what this Missouri team is, man, besides unpredictable, because they also lost to Ole Miss in a game where they were favorites. Missouri's like, yeah, we're going to win as an underdog and we're going to lose as a favorite. That's what we're going to do. All right. Well, now they're back at home, and I don't really see them overlooking Auburn, especially after losing as, I think, a favorite on the road against Ole Miss. Let me see. Oh, no, I said Ole Miss was a slight favorite. Never mind. Ole Miss was a very small favorite in that one. So scratch all that. But I think Missouri will show up, although they do have LSU, Georgia on deck. Those teams are doing better this year. Although I think Auburn is still in like the tournament discussion here, and it is still Auburn. I mean, they still have a lot of that name recognition. So I like Missouri in this game. Auburn's down from 2 to a pick 'em here. So the money is seemingly coming in pretty strong on Missouri, knocking that line down like that. So that is the way that I would lean towards Missouri, although it looks like they're probably going to go off as a favorite there. SEC Network has Kentucky at LSU, also at 7 p.m. Kentucky, they got to get something going, man. They got to get right, and maybe they're about to do that because they did just get a win over Mississippi State at home. Nice bounce back from Kentucky losing as a big favorite at home to Missouri, and I think we lost on that game too. They caught Missouri off the upset of Florida too. I don't know how Kentucky bombed that game as much as they did. There were rumblings in Kentucky, man. They want Mark Pope fired. Mark Pope. They want a new pope installed in Kentucky, man. But then Kentucky blew out Mississippi State in their last game. I mean, that's not that impressive with Mississippi State being down this year. But what it does do is it will give Kentucky new momentum and kind of make those negative thoughts disappear a little bit, bring that out on the road. I think maybe Kentucky will show up with some momentum here, although you do have to worry. They do have Tennessee next, so maybe that is a little bit of a look ahead. That's a rivalry between those two teams. Those two states don't like each other. Tennessee's still ranked, so they do have that game on deck, but Kentucky not really in a position to overlook anybody right now, and LSU is potentially a tournament team this year. LSU, they just lost to Vandy. They covered for us, but they were never really in that game as far as winning the game is concerned. They had to make a little bit of a comeback to kind of backdoor that cover, I think, as well, although we got it done. LSU now at home against Kentucky off of that. But if you look at the number in this game, though, the number just tells you what you need to know. Kentucky's 10-6, LSU's 12-4, yet Kentucky's a 4.5-point road favorite. The odds makers are telling you what you need to know here, man. They're telling you Kentucky is the better team. I think the spot does set up a little bit better for them as well. Just like I said, I lean Kentucky in this one. LSU doesn't have an SEC win yet, though, so LSU is starting to fall out of the tournament picture, so they do kind of need a good win here, and this would be a decent win for them, but both teams really kind of, I think, are in a spot where they're going to try to get this win. Kentucky has gone up from 2.5 to 4.5, as I said. 62% of the tickets on LSU. LSU shaping up to be maybe a public underdog in this one. Pros versus Joes situation, man, where the pros are on the favorite. That is something that you got to take notice of, because if that's the case, you're siding against the public with the pros and you're actually on the better team. I mean, that is something you don't find that often, and that's something you got to look at. 66% of the cash on Kentucky. As I said, I lean Kentucky in that game as well. Kyle, what's up, man? Yeah, well, everybody's saying Kentucky sucks, but I will push back on that, and I am not a Kentucky fan because I don't like John Calipari when he was there. Ken Bum still has Kentucky as the 28th best team in the country, and he has them very low in his luck index at 329. Pretty balanced offense and defense as well. So Kentucky, not as bad as people are claiming that they are. All right. UAB and Tulane is kind of an interesting one in the American, where I think Tulane is just not as good as their record looks, man. I think they've had a weak schedule so far. I mean, if you look at their schedule, it's been pretty weak, and every time they've played anybody remotely decent, they've lost, except, well, BC, if you want to call them remotely decent. Tulane did beat them, but they lost to Utah State. Utah State is very good, though. They lost to Akron. UC San Diego blew them out, so this Tulane resume is not impressive. They did have a decent win over FAU in conference play, but we're going to look at this, and UAB is actually a road favorite here against Tulane, even though Tulane has a slightly better overall record and the better conference record. So you got to be thinking, why is UAB favored here? Well, again, the odds makers are telling you, don't let your eyes deceive you. Don't let the records deceive you. UAB is actually the better team. They have faced a little bit more of a difficult schedule. They actually have a pretty decent win in here against High Point in the out-of-conference schedule. High Point is legit. And UAB, decent win for them against South Florida. Although people are probably going to look and say, oh, but UAB lost to FAU. And Tulane beat FAU. And UAB just barely got by East Carolina. So why would we want UAB here? Well, that's part of the reason why I would want UAB here, is because they're coming off a bad game against East Carolina. I think maybe they were looking ahead. Maybe they were in a sandwich. I mean, that was sandwiched in between South Florida, Florida Atlantic, and Tulane. So I think they overlooked ECU. Bad performance from UAB. I think they bounce back. I think they get this one. Tulane is coming into this one with momentum, at least. It's not really a bad spot for Tulane at the very least. They do have North Texas next, but they're not playing that well, so I don't really think that's a look ahead or anything. So the spot's not bad for Tulane, but I think it is a more like rally spot for UAB. Like, we have to be focused after that bad game, even though they won it. So I lean UAB, 2-point favorite. Now, it looks like the money is kind of on the Tulane side, but I don't agree with that. Although they're also kind of looking like a public dog in some ways. 83% of the tickets, 97% of the cash on them. I lean UAB in that game. All right. San Diego State and Wyoming as we get to the 8 p.m. slate. CBS Sports has this game in the Mountain West. It's actually a pretty interesting Mountain West matchup, man. Wyoming is actually, they're looking pretty competitive in the Mountain West right now. And as you can see here, that the odds makers are telling you that is the case, with San Diego State only being a 1.5-point road favorite here. So this is not a gimme by any means for San Diego State here. San Diego State is coming into this game with momentum, at least. They just beat Fresno. Easy win for them. Not a win that's going to have them overconfident. They do have New Mexico next, so I don't know if they're going to be looking ahead to that. Maybe, I don't know. Having to go into Wyoming, a little bit of a weird spot. You got to go into high elevation, whatever. Although, of course, you're in the Mountain West. You're used to playing in high elevation. Although San Diego State, of course, doesn't play in high elevation at home. So going to Wyoming still might be a little bit of an issue for them. I don't know if I love the spot for Wyoming, though. And I don't love that they didn't cover for us over the weekend against Nevada, where Wyoming kind of blew that game. Wyoming was winning that game outright pretty late in the game and blew the whole thing and didn't even cover as a dog, so I'm not happy about that. Now, off of that blown loss, or blown potential upset, I should say, by Wyoming, they could be a little bit hungover coming off that game, man. But the thing is, they're not going to overlook San Diego State, though. That's the thing. So the spot does set up a little bit better for San Diego State. They're up from 2 to 2.5, but all the money looks like it's coming in on the Wyoming side. San Diego State looking public as well. 75% of the tickets on them. 73% of the cash coming back on Wyoming. I won't disagree with Wyoming here, although I hesitate again because I do think the spot is a little bit worse for them. All right, more best bets. Let's go. We got the Missouri Valley one is coming up in the 8 p.m. slate here. This is just on ESPN Plus, but we're going to lay the points with Southern Illinois. And if you look at this, like, again, record-wise, you might think, well, why are we doing this? We're going against Drake, by the way. Let's we gotta do it, man. We gotta fade the Drake here.
Boy, I'm really starting to dislike the Drake.
Hate the Drake.
All right. So, as far, what was I talking? Oh, yes. So the records here, both teams are sitting at 8-9 and 2-4 in conference. So why is Southern Illinois a 5.5-point favorite here? Well, the odds makers are again telling you something with that. They're telling you Southern Illinois is better than the record looks probably. And remember, I gave you Southern Illinois. Which game was it? I think we had Southern Illinois in one of these other games not that long ago, and I believe we got a win on it. Although I don't remember which game it was. But they've been covering some games. They face a pretty difficult conference schedule so far. And Ken Baum has them very low in his luck index, 342nd. So he has them as one of the 25, 23 really unluckiest teams in the entire country. He has Southern Illinois in the top 100 in defense. And he has them in the top, he has them 61st in overall strength of schedule. So Southern Illinois, they played a difficult schedule. They're unlucky, according to Ken Baum. Whereas Drake, I know Drake is also unlucky, but they faced a weaker schedule. Yeah, both teams are unlucky, but Drake also is not even in the top 200 defensively now. So Ben McCollum or whatever his name is leaving to go to Iowa. I don't know, man. Drake definitely taking a huge step back from that. They're not that defensive team anymore. Southern Illinois is the way better defensive team. I know we're laying points, and defense is not the only thing. I don't love laying points with a team that focuses on defense necessarily, but we also got to look at the spot here, and I think the spot does set up really well for Southern Illinois. Drake is coming off a huge game against Belmont where they almost pulled off the upset at home against Belmont. Belmont is probably the best team in this conference right now. I have them winning this conference right now in my bracketology. Huge performance from Drake. Now they're coming off of that. I think they could be a little bit hungover, man, going back out on the road. And Drake hasn't exactly been good in road conference play. They played okay, losing by 9 at Murray State. Only beat Evansville by 1. That's kind of a red flag. And then they got destroyed by 27 at Bradley. So their road record is not that good. Southern Illinois actually beat Belmont on the road, which might be actually a good sign. And they almost beat Murray State and Bradley on the road and didn't play that badly at home against Illinois State either. So Southern Illinois has already faced most of the top teams in this conference, and they've performed pretty well against them. But now they're coming off of by far their worst conference performance. But you can absolutely explain why. They lost to Illinois-Chicago. I think Illinois-Chicago was an opinion that I gave out on the show, a lean. It was a really bad spot for Southern Illinois, man. They'd beaten Belmont on the road. Huge win for Southern Illinois. Then they had to go to Illinois-Chicago, and Illinois-Chicago considers themselves to be a little brother to Southern Illinois as well, so they got up for that game. Southern Illinois, I think, looked right past them because they did have Drake, and then they have Belmont again next. But the reason why I think Southern Illinois is absolutely going to focus on Drake and why it was a look ahead to them in their last game, which made it a sandwich. Guess who knocked out Southern Illinois from the Mountain West, I always say Mountain West, Missouri Valley. MVC versus MWC. Yeah, guess who knocked Southern Illinois out of I almost said it again, out of the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament last year? Yeah, it was Drake. So Southern Illinois got knocked out of the conference tournament by Drake last year. They lost to Drake both times they played them last year, so they were 0-2 against Drake. I think they only played them once in regular season play last year, and they lost at home to Drake. So they lost here to Drake last year by 10 points. So this is like a double revenge spot for Southern Illinois as well. So I like it. We're going with Southern Illinois in this one. The money looks like it agrees with me. They dropped from 6 to 5.5, but 50-50 on the tickets and 80% of the cash is on Southern Illinois. I know the total is low. These teams don't really play fast. Southern Illinois kind of more of a mid-tempo style, I think. So maybe they will try to speed it up a little bit just to throw off Drake. No, I'm wrong. No, they're actually fast. My mistake. So if Southern Illinois is able to push the pace a little bit here, they might actually be able to throw Drake out of their preferred style and out of their element because Drake likes to play slow. So hopefully Southern Illinois can control the pace and speed this thing up. But yes, we are going with Southern Illinois in that one, minus the points. All right. Next up, what do we have here? I have another one of my games in as well, and I don't even see it on the schedule. Where the hell is this other game? What? I feel like I skipped my other game. How could I skip it when I have a play on it? I don't even see it. Where is it? I apologize. Yeah, I don't even see my other game on here on the schedule. I think it's at the same time. I think it's in the 8 p.m. Oh, no, I do see it. All right. We haven't talked about it yet. All right. Fordham at St. Louis is going to be kind of an interesting one in the A-10, with St. Louis being the dominant force in this conference. So they should be able to win this game, although Fordham is also coming off an upset win over St. Bonaventure, so that was a big win for Fordham. It could put them in a letdown spot. However, I doubt that they're going to overlook the best team in the conference, St. Louis. St. Louis is coming off an easy win over LaSalle, though, so I think the spot does set up better for St. Louis because Fordham is going to have to put in a huge effort multiple games in a row. So I think they might be up against it in this one. The money is coming in on Fordham, though. We have 80% of the tickets on St. Louis, 80% of the cash on Fordham. I kind of don't agree with it, though. St. Louis is an 18.5-point favorite, down from 19, but I probably would lay it. The only issue is, does St. Louis just kind of come in and go through the motions, get in, get out? I don't know. All right, we have Temple and Rice. Temple and Memphis. Temple and Rice, that would not be a game I would talk about. Temple and Memphis, this is interesting because Temple is 11-5 and undefeated in the American Conference. Memphis is 7-8 overall and has a loss in the American, yet Memphis is a 7.5-point favorite in this game. I mean, you got to look at this and think that line is just so ridiculous, man. And again, it's the odds makers telling you Memphis is actually the better team. I think there's no question Memphis faced the more difficult out-of-conference schedule, and that is why part of the reason why their record looks way worse. So right away, I'm looking at Memphis for that reason. The money is not, though. The money has dropped Memphis from 10 to 8. 75% of tickets, 52% of the cash on them. So the public ticket percentage seems like it's on Memphis, but why would it be? Like, how could the public come in and see a below 500 Memphis team, even though, yeah, Memphis has that name around them, but really? You're telling me the public is laying 8 points with a below 500 team against a team with a way better record? I'm not buying that, so I don't know if I really buy those percentages. Although, again, I don't really want to buck what the market numbers say, but Temple's also facing easy conference schedule so far, man. Charlotte, UTSA, and East Carolina. Yeah, that's a real gauntlet there, with 2 of those games being at home, although Charlotte is playing okay, but really easy schedule so far for Temple, man. Now they go on the road to face Memphis. It's not going to be easy for them. Memphis, again, they face a more difficult overall schedule. Their conference schedule's been more difficult, too, because they faced North Texas. They actually beat them at home, although North Texas looks a little bit down this year. And Memphis did lose on the road at FAU. That's not an easy game. Now Memphis is back at home. I think Memphis is going to show up for this one, man. I don't really see what the money is apparently seeing here. I would lay it with Memphis. I would side with, oh yeah, this line looks totally weird. This is a very suspect-looking line here. I would lay it with Memphis if I was going to play it. Peacock has a Big 12 game here between UCF and Kansas State. UCF just dropped out of the rankings, man. So they had that target on their back. Now they're outside of the rankings. Are they really a top 25 team? Probably not. Where does KenPom have them? KenPom has them 46, so no. But they dropped out of the rankings. I forget if it was with the Oklahoma State loss or with this escape against Cincinnati, but it was an escape. Now they're going to Manhattan, Kansas. Might not be easy, though, man. I mean, last time UCF went out to this area of the country, they lost in Stillwater to Oklahoma State. And they do play Arizona and Iowa State up next, so I don't know if they're going to look past Kansas State here, because Kansas State has really not been that good this year, so they might be a team that you might overlook, actually. Kansas State's coming back home after making the Arizona trip and losing both games there. They were actually a favorite at Arizona State. Arizona State not doing well. And Kansas State took that loss as well. So coming back home might be better for Kansas State to just show up and try to get this win here. They played okay when they were at home against BYU not that long ago. So I lean to Kansas State in this one. And the odds makers are telling you a little bit of something with Kansas State being a favorite here. It's another one of these lines that looks a little bit weird. Like, why would Kansas State be a favorite against a 13-2 team, right? Like, that just looks weird. Public's probably going to want to come in and take UCF as the dog because they have the better record, even though they have less name recognition. But, yeah, I like Kansas State here. They dropped from 3 to 2, but 56% of tickets, 77% of the cash on Kansas State. So the money is saying Kansas State there. I do not disagree. South Dakota State is at North Dakota State in the Battle of the Summit. These two teams seem to, more often than not, one of these teams is the winner of this conference. Although last year, Omaha somehow did it after North Dakota State got bounced from the tournament. St. Thomas is one of the better teams in this conference right now as well. But right now, South Dakota State's a little bit down, and North Dakota State is one of the best teams in this conference. South Dakota State just beat Denver at home. That's not an impressive win there or whatever. North Dakota State coming into this one off a win at Omaha, and Omaha did win the conference last year, so maybe that was a little bit of a bigger win. And North Dakota State does face St. Thomas next, so it's possible they look ahead to that because that is going to be their main competition to try to win the Summit this year. So even though North Dakota State versus South Dakota State is usually a rivalry, I think North Dakota State might have some other things in mind here. So I would probably lean towards taking the points in this one with South Dakota State, but don't really have a great reason to do it. North Dakota State's a 5.5-point favorite in that one. The total is 149, so it is a low total. Next up is my next play, and this is about to get ugly, man. We're in the Sunbelt at 8 p.m. It's on ESPN+. We're going to take Louisiana. Excuse me. +9 here. This is really all about the spot. I know Louisiana's terrible. I get it, but Texas State isn't exactly that good. KenPom's got Louisiana in like the bottom 40. I get it. although at least they're decent-ish defensively. They're horrible offensively, but defensively they're at least respectable to some extent. Louisiana plays ridiculously slow, one of the slowest tempo teams in the country. Ken Pom does have them as being one of the unluckier teams in the country, though. For Texas State, he's got them as a lucky team, 90th in luck. They face a very weak schedule, even weaker than Louisiana has. They also play slow, so this is probably going to be a game where points are at a premium because both teams play slow. And Texas State is not exactly impressive offensively at 283rd, according to Ken Pom. Texas State is also the worst defense. Or no, excuse me. They're not the worst defense, but it's close, excuse me. So it's almost a situation where Louisiana's the better defense getting points. It's not quite, but the teams are close in Ken Pom's defensive rankings. So I think points are going to be hard to come by in this game, man. It's going to be slow. It's two teams that aren't good offensively. Texas State is at 261 in Ken Pom's rankings, which isn't exactly good. Now, Louisiana, they have won 2 games in conference already, so that's not that bad, although both of them were against UL Monroe, who is the worst team in the conference, so I know they haven't beaten anybody else yet, but their other games were against South Alabama, Southern Miss, and Troy. I mean, those are good teams in the conference. Texas State is mediocre, really, and probably worse than all 3 of those teams, so Louisiana gets a little bit of an easier task here facing Texas State than those teams. I think they're going to show up. Louisiana just lost by 20 at home to Troy, so I think they're going to be a little bit angry about that. But really what we're looking at here is Texas State is in a horrible spot. Texas State just played Southern Miss and Arkansas State, and I know this does mean Texas State has faced a very difficult conference schedule. I know they've already faced Arkansas State both times, South Alabama and Troy, and Southern Miss. So, yeah, Texas State has had a very difficult conference schedule. I'm not denying that. And most of the games on the road as well, the last 4 games on the road. So they're back at home now, where they did win against South Alabama. But Texas State's coming off almost beating Arkansas State on the road, man. This would have been a huge upset, beating one of the top teams in the conference. Texas State was an 11.5-point underdog in this game, and they lost by 1. And they almost won the game after Arkansas State was winning most of the game. Texas State refused to go away, and they played them basically right to the wire. So I don't know what Texas State's going to have left after that. And they play Southern Miss next, which is quick revenge for losing to them not that long ago. But it's also a big game because Southern Miss is at the top of the Sunbelt standings right now, too. So this is definitely a sandwich spot. So we're going to take the points with Louisiana in this one. Texas State did drop from a 9-point favorite to an 8-point favorite already, so I apologize. But again, these basketball lines, a lot of them move fast, man. Hopefully that line is still fine to do this. The total is low, like I said, at 130. So I like taking a lot of points when it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game. Like I said, based on the style that these teams play and the lack of offense on both sides, that seems like it's what's going to happen here. Total seems to bear that out. So Louisiana is the play there. All right. We have the Battle of Illinois as we get to the late portion here. We still have a lot of games left, man. I'm not talking about all the rest of them, but I will talk about all the big conference games that are left. Number 13, Illinois at Northwestern here in the Battle of Illinois, 8:30 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. This is a big game, man. I think it's kind of big for both teams, although it is probably bigger for Northwestern as the little brother in this situation. Both teams are also kind of Chicago area as well, so it is a big game. It's especially a big game for Northwestern, though. Now, Illinois is coming off beating Iowa. Nice win on the road against a ranked Iowa team. So Illinois could maybe be in a little bit of a letdown for that reason. They're playing a third road game in 4 games, a second road game in a row. That makes it a little bit difficult for Illinois to do this. Now, Northwestern only sitting at 8-8. I think Northwestern is going to show up for this as they lost in overtime to Rutgers on the road in their last game, and that was a game we had Rutgers here on the show. That was one of my wins the other day. I gave you guys Rutgers. I thought it was a horrible spot for Northwestern because they had actually played Michigan State pretty close, even though they lost by 10. That game was close down the stretch against Michigan State. They were coming off that game, having to go to New Jersey to play this awful Rutgers team, and they had this huge Illinois game on deck and then Nebraska after it, so that was a sandwich spot. Part of that handicap was that Northwestern is going to be focused on Illinois. So I think they will be. I think they're coming off an ugly loss to Rutgers now, so I think Northwestern is in the better situational spot now here. I think they might be the more motivated team here as well. So I would lean towards Northwestern plus the points in this one. The money seems like it's also in agreement all over this one. Illinois down from 9.5 to 8.5 here. 50-50 on the tickets, but 91% of the cash on Northwestern right now. So the money seems like it's on Northwestern. I agree. Northwestern plus the points in that one would be the side I would lean to there. And with Illinois, again, like I mentioned a little while ago, I'm used to them being this fast-paced team, but that's not what they are this year. So it might be a little bit of a slower-paced game, and that probably also helps the underdog. And Northwestern also plays slow. And Northwestern, by the way, is also the unluckiest team in Division I now, according to Ken Palm. So that is also what you're looking at with Northwestern. Kind of an undervalued team sitting at 8-8. Ken Palm saying they're a little better than that. UCLA is having to travel to Pennsylvania to play Penn State. This is on Fox Sports 1 at 8:30. Bit of a difficult travel spot for UCLA, although they're probably a little bit used to it now because they're facing the Big Ten schedule like this for the second or third time now since the conference realignment. UCLA did already have to go on the road a couple of times this year to Iowa and Wisconsin, but they did lose both games. Now, UCLA did bounce back from that with a win at home over Maryland. Maryland's awful, but that might give UCLA some momentum to carry back out on the road. But they do play Ohio State and Purdue after this. They play Ohio State on the road after this, and then they come back home to play Purdue. So it is possible they overlook Penn State in this spot, man, because you're looking at a potential tournament team in Ohio State, and then obviously Purdue is elite. So maybe they overlook this Penn State team that has this really ugly record. Penn State, though, they're coming off a game where they only lost by 8 to Purdue. So then the question is, how close was this game, really? And, you know, it wasn't that close. Purdue had a double-digit lead late in the game, so it wasn't really like it went to the wire or anything. So I think the spot does kind of set up better for Penn State. Now, I thought Penn State would do worse in that game against Purdue because Penn State had almost beaten Michigan the game prior to that. But whatever it was, man, I mean, they at least had a respectable result, only losing by 8 at Purdue. They also only lost by 8 to Illinois not that long ago. They played Michigan State to within 4, which was a win for us on the show. So this Penn State team has shown the ability to be competitive against some pretty good teams, and UCLA is not really at the level of those teams. So I lean to Penn State in this game. UCLA down from 4 to 3.5. The market seems to agree with Penn State here. UCLA, 67% of tickets, only 53% of the cash on them. I agree with the market read on that one. Penn State would be the way I would lean. ESPN2, as we get to the late night games here, or later games. Number 10, Vandy is at Texas. Interesting game. Vandy is still undefeated. They are at least a little more battle-tested now that they played Alabama and LSU, although we know LSU's a little bit down. Well, not a little bit down, but LSU is not as good as their record looks, is what I should say. Now Vandy's got to go on the road, though, to play Texas. Not an easy environment, man, and they do play Florida and Arkansas coming up next, so maybe Vandy will look past Texas a little bit here to those bigger opponents that are on deck here. Texas, though, they're coming off a big upset win, so I don't love the spot for Texas either. They just went into Alabama and beat Alabama, man. That is a big win for Texas. And now I'm not going to say they're going to overlook Vandy, of course not, but they might not have a ton left in the tank after that win over a fast-paced Alabama team. Big win for Texas there, so I don't exactly love how it sets up for Texas here. The money is coming in on the Texas side with 69% of tickets, 91% of the cash on them right now. Vandy is a 5-point road favorite here. And it does look too easy to lay the points with Vandy against an unranked Texas team. In this situation, though, man, I don't know, because it's a look-ahead spot for Vandy, but Texas is going to have to bring that effort multiple games in a row. Vandy's coming off a game where they didn't cover. I slightly lean to Vandy in this one. They're up to 5 with juice there, but not a strong opinion for me. And I usually do not want to lay teams that look like they're going to be public, and it looks way too easy to lay the points with them unless it's a real strong situation. So I'm staying away. Garrett, you have your North Carolina Tar Heels, number 14 in the country, having to go out to the West Coast to Stanford. And I talk about this, these East East Coast teams having to go out to the West to play these late night games, it can be a little bit difficult. It can mess with their biological clock, man, because they have to play late on their biological clock. Although, at least with basketball, it's a 2-hour game instead of a 3-hour game, but still not that easy to head out to the Pacific Coast and have to do that in a night game. North Carolina, they're coming off beating Wake. Now, I could see this going two ways. Either they're going to refocus because they had a close game against Wake, and they should have won that game more easily. And, of course, Wake is the little brother and gets up more for it. So maybe North Carolina will have focus here because of that. Or you could argue that maybe it's actually even a letdown spot because Wake is an in-state rival. So which way is this going to go? I don't know. Wake, not very good this year, so I don't know. To me, it kind of seems like, yeah, North Carolina should show up for this game. But then again, they do have to deal with the travel spot, which is difficult. They might show up again because Stanford has a pretty good record, although Stanford's not as good as their record looks. Stanford is coming back home as well, so Stanford has to readjust to the Pacific time zone as well. So the odds makers seem to schedule the ACC like this, where they have both teams flying across country at the same time, so it kind of negates any advantage one team might have. But it is probably still more of an advantage to Stanford because they're coming back home, so they're more used to the environment they're going to be playing in. They did just lose to Virginia. They have Duke on deck. They're going to get Duke at home. You're a very difficult couple of home games against UNC and Duke. They're not going to overlook either one of them, though. So I don't know, man. This is a difficult handicap. It is a weird spot for North Carolina. North Carolina is going to be a public side. They're a 3.5-point favorite, up from 3. 83% of the tickets on them, the 86% of the cash. Ugh, man. I mean, something tells me that I want to lean towards taking the points in this one. Sorry, Garrett, but I don't have a strong opinion on it at all, though. But it just looks too easy to be on the North Carolina side there. And unless there's a really strong situation telling me otherwise, when it looks too easy, I worry that it is. All right, Peacock at 9 p.m. We have Utah at Texas Tech, number 15, Texas Tech. Utah is coming off a huge performance, man, in the basketball edition of the Holy War against BYU. Utah took BYU right to the limit, man. That was a monster game for Utah. Utah's not very good right now, and BYU is, so Utah probably considers themselves to be the little brother of the two in the state of Utah, and they put an all-out effort in for that game, man. So I think Utah might not have a ton left in the tank here for Texas Tech. And Texas Tech's coming off that game where they almost blew it against Colorado. So they're coming off a much more lackluster performance here. Coming back home, I lean to Texas Tech in this game, but they do have BYU up next, which worries me a little bit. And then, of course, Utah's not going to overlook Texas Tech. It's just a matter of they might just have nothing left after that huge game against BYU. So I like Texas Tech in this game. They're laying 17.5, which is... yeah, I know. It's a pretty big spread, although Utah sucks. Oh, wait, what? Utah sucks? What? Hold on a minute.
Utah sucks! Utah sucks! Utah sucks! Utah sucks! Utah sucks! Utah sucks! Utah sucks!
As you noticed yesterday, I have my Celtic pride drops here. I clipped myself, baby. One of my favorite movies, because as a Boston Celtics fan, I kind of have to be a fan of it. It's a comedy the critics hate, man, but I recommend watching it. I think it's funny. It's so stupid that it's funny, you know, and I'm in it as an extra, as a child, so there is that as well. Although I think you have to, really, figure out where you can kind of see me in it and pause it, and you can only really see me because you can find where my dad is in it because he has a big, gray beard. North Carolina, by the way, is up to 4.5 now. So, I don't know. Some movement on the North Carolina side there, but I don't know. I slightly disagree with that one, but I do like Texas Tech. I'm tempted to actually play Texas Tech here because of this spot, but I'm going to slightly stay away from it. But I do like Texas Tech in that game. All right. I don't think we had anything else to say about that. 83% of tickets and 96% of the cash on Texas Tech. So the money is agreeing with Texas Tech. Okay. South Carolina is at number 17, Arkansas on the SEC network at 9 p.m. South Carolina just lost pretty close to Georgia. They played pretty well. Big game for South Carolina. Now they're going to maintain that effort again, going out on the road to Arkansas. And they might get kind of an angry Arkansas because Arkansas just got wiped by 22 points at Auburn. So Arkansas might show up for this game, although they do have Georgia and Vandy on deck. So possible look ahead as well. But Arkansas took that loss. By the way, Auburn was actually favored in that game. So that was one of those games where he had an unranked favorite against a ranked underdog, and the unranked team did actually come through in that one with Auburn. I believe they were a slight favorite in that one, but I lean to Arkansas on this one. I think Arkansas is in more of like the bounce back spot here. The money kind of agrees, although Arkansas dropped from 12 to 10.5, but 83% of the tickets and 97% of the cash on Arkansas. So the market read looks similar to Texas Tech, and yeah, I would lay the points with Arkansas in that one. All right, and then my last play, we're going to take the points with Virginia Tech, even though they're having to travel to Texas, which is a little bit of a weird travel spot for them because SMU hasn't been in the ACC for that long. But I think Virginia Tech's coming into this with momentum, as Virginia Tech had lost 2 games in a row. They beat Cal at home, not a huge win for Virginia Tech, just a win. They won. They were favored. They actually didn't cover. So I think they're going to have some momentum, and they're going to be focused coming into this game against SMU, man. And they only have Notre Dame up next, Syracuse, so I don't think they'll be looking ahead. I think you will have a focused Virginia Tech team against SMU. This is also kind of a bubble battle where Virginia Tech, I think, kind of needs a better performance in this game because they're like one of the last teams in the tournament right now. And SMU, I believe, is more securely in the tournament right now because SMU was ranked up until like their last game. Or they became ranked, I think, with the win over North Carolina and then became unranked after that. So SMU is more securely in the tournament. So Virginia Tech kind of needs the game more for their resume right now, and they're getting a ton of points. So I don't love being on teams that need a game, but when they're an underdog like this and the spot sets up for it, yeah, I'll be on them. When you think you're going to get more motivation out of a big underdog, you do want to consider them. For SMU, I mean, look at the run that they're coming off of here, man. They beat North Carolina at home. Then they went out on the road and they played Clemson to within 4. And then they followed that up by playing Duke on the road to within 7. And this game was pretty close down the stretch, man. SMU, they were losing basically the whole game, but they just refused to go away. And they came all the way back and cut it to a 1-possession game in the final 2 minutes of the game. So SMU put in that late run, had a chance to maybe get there and maybe do something in that game, and they fell just short. I think they're going to be in a huge flat spot here. Not only that, but they have a look-ahead spot as well to Virginia on deck on Saturday, one of the noontime games on the big Saturday board. SMU's got to play Virginia. They're going to be hosting them. So this is a sandwich spot, I think, man, between ranked teams like this. I like Virginia Tech in this one, and that is what we're doing. SMU already dropped from 9 to 7.5, so the money looks like it agrees with me. I would at least get the 7.5 here because 7 is the key number, key-ish in basketball because that's when teams stop intentionally fouling at the 3-possession threshold. SMU looks public, 80% of the tickets and cash on them. So, excuse me, even though Virginia Tech actually has a slightly better record, I think SMU might wind up being the public side here anyway. So I like how it sets up. Virginia Tech is my last college basketball play of the day there. Texas Tech is definitely tempting, man. That's one of the other ones that I was like seriously considering. But yeah, I guess I'll stay off of it a little bit. Sometimes I worry, maybe more so this year than I ever have. I worry a little bit about like jumping on that team that's the ranked team and laying like a huge amount of points with them when maybe their opponent will still show up, even if their opponent is in kind of a bad spot. Like I want to look more for spots where I think a team just isn't going to be focused. Although, again, I think Texas Tech should be focused. But you already heard my handicapping on that. CBS Sports at 10 p.m. has now ranked number 23, Utah State, hosting Nevada here. Utah State, they're good, man. No doubt about it. Like, they're probably going to be the one Mountain West team that will get in that large bid. If they don't win the Mountain West tournament, I believe they'll get in anyway. Mountain West looks a bit down this year. There may be an argument for San Diego State to get in that large as we see how the conference plays out. But Utah State will definitely, I think, be in the tournament regardless of whether they win the conference or not. But now they're ranked, and I talk about this, when a team cracks into the rankings like this, especially a lower conference team like this where they're not usually in a situation like this, sometimes it'll affect them negatively mentally, and it'll put a target on their back, so the other teams will be targeting them, but they'll have this sense of almost overconfidence. So I don't really love that for Utah State. They're coming off blowing out Boise, man. They might be feeling really high on themselves after going to Boise, beating them by 27, and Boise is a team that usually doesn't give up a lot of points. Boise might not be what we thought they were coming into this season, man. They have had a bad season so far, Boise. It's been pretty bad for them. So Utah State really riding high right now. Nevada is coming off a close call kind of at home against Wyoming, where I'm pissed. I think we should have had the win with Wyoming in that one, at least the cover, with Wyoming. As you can see, Nevada was in a sandwich spot. They played close against San Diego State the game before that. They had this monster game against Utah State on deck. So I think Nevada was in a bad spot. They wound up getting the job done anyway, but I think they're absolutely going to show up for Utah State. So I like Nevada in this one, plus the points. That's the way I would lean in this one. Utah State's a 14-point favorite in that one. I would take the points if I was going to play it. Then we do have on Fox Sports 1 the Battle of Arizona. Arizona State at Arizona, of course. Arizona's ranked number 1 in the country, and of course they are. They're undefeated. They haven't done anything wrong. You could maybe call into question their schedule a little bit. They haven't faced a strong conference schedule yet, so we'll see how good they really are. But they're not going to lose to Arizona State, I wouldn't imagine. Arizona State is just not very good, but they're coming into the game with momentum at least, because Arizona State finally got a win against Kansas State. A small upset in that one, breaking a 4-game losing streak for Arizona State and getting their first conference win. So they're coming into this game with momentum, which I think is a positive. And they're not going to overlook Arizona. And sometimes some weird things happen in this rivalry. Remember, the underdog can really step it up sometimes and overperform, especially Arizona State. They consider themselves to be the little brother in this rivalry. So they're definitely going to show up, I would imagine. Arizona coming off an easy win at TCU. They do have UCF on deck, who was just ranked. So, are they going to overlook Arizona State? There's the possibility they do, even though this is a rivalry. It is possible that maybe they care more about the upcoming game against UCF, but it doesn't look like a terrible spot for Arizona to me, so I'm staying away. Arizona's a 22-point favorite. They are public, 75% of the tickets and only 71% of the cash. I would agree with the market read, and I would lean towards taking the points with Arizona State, but I don't want to do it. It's expected to be pretty fast-paced as well. Arizona plays fast. Total a pretty high 168. And Ken Bum has Arizona still actually ranked behind Michigan. He's got Arizona ranked number 2. And Arizona being the 26th fastest tempo team. Speaking of Michigan, they're in action tonight as well on the Big Ten Network. Number 4, Michigan, having to go to Washington. There are some things that I consider to be negatives here from Michigan, man. First of all, they lost to Wisconsin. Now, one argument might be, well, Michigan was a 20-point favorite in that game, so that was a horrible loss, so they should bounce back from that. Yes, I understand that argument, but the other argument is when you have a team that's undefeated like Michigan this late into the season and they finally take a loss, I talk about this. Sometimes you get hung over in the next game, man. I don't know what to call that spot, but it's like the loss of undefeatedness hangover spot. I don't know what else to call it. So I could see them being hung over here and they're having to go play a late night game on the West Coast, which doesn't seem great to me either. A little bit of an unfamiliar environment, having to go to Seattle to play Washington. Big Ten Network has this game, by the way, if you want to watch it late at night. And again, it's going to be really late on Michigan's biological clock, too, so I don't love the spot. And it's possible they overlook Washington because Washington is a bit of I feel lightheaded a little bit. Oh, man. Bear with me. Washington doesn't have a great record either, so they're a team that might be overlooked a little bit. Washington is staying at home here, so they're not traveling back out to the Pacific Coast. So they do have a travel advantage staying at home, and they just beat Ohio State, which is a good win, but I don't think it's going to make them overconfident. And they're not going to overlook Michigan. So I would lean towards taking the points with Washington in this game. And it looks fairly easy. The public is going to be on Michigan, man, because they're going to see, well, Michigan lost that game. They're still really, really good. Of course, they're going to bounce back. That's like the public's sentiment. When a team takes their first loss like that, oh, they'll immediately bounce back. But often that is not what happens. 12.5 actually seems low for a Michigan team that is ranked this highly and has been this dominant this year. Public will probably have no qualms about laying a number like that. 94% of the tickets are on Michigan. It says 99% of the cash right now, though I don't buy that. But I think it is going to be a situation where Michigan is a very public side in that game. I lean Washington in that game. Duke is also having to go out to the Pacific Coast and play even later at 11 p.m. on ACC Network. So they get the real shaft job here. Which I'm kind of happy about. Garrett, you're probably happy about that North Carolina gets at least the earlier game on ACC Network. So Duke is really the one that has to play really late on their biological clock. Duke is coming off a couple of nice ranked wins over Louisville and SMU. Going out to the Pacific Coast could be a difficult spot here for them, man. So I'm leaning towards fading Duke in this one. Cal is coming back from the East Coast as well, though. But, of course, again, they're at least playing at home, but the ACC did set it up so that both of these teams are crossing the country at the same time, so that kind of negates the travel a little bit. California did just lose both games in Virginia, so I think back at home they should be focused, I would guess. I do lean to Cal in this one, and they're more used to playing a late-night game like this. Duke is down from 14 to 12. They're a very public team, 12.5, excuse me. 90% of the tickets, only 77% of the cash on Duke. I agree with the market reading in that one. I would lean towards taking the points with California in that one. I kind of prefer that one over any sort of lean in the North Carolina game, by the way. So Garrett probably likes to hear that. But yeah, that would be what I would think. Duke plays a little bit faster this year, which I'm not used to. They're more of a mid-tempo team. I'm used to them being a slow team. I'm like, why is the total 152.5? Yeah, because Duke doesn't quite play as slow this year, but still, yeah, I think I would lean towards Cal plus the points. And then we do have TCU at BYU to finish the board off here on ESPN2, also at 11 p.m. TCU is coming off that big game against Arizona, but TCU just didn't hang, man. TCU was coming off that big overtime game against Kansas, so I think they just ran out of steam. They just didn't have it. I definitely did not want to jump on TCU in that game against Arizona, even though it looked really easy to play the Arizona side. I just said it was a stay away. Now, TCU should show up for a game at BYU, but they are having to go into elevation to do it. But it's not a bad spot for TCU as far as the fact that they played Arizona in the last game. It wasn't a close game, so I don't think they're going to be hung over or anything like that. They might have to adjust to playing in elevation, though. Now, BYU, the spot does set up pretty fine for them as they're staying in Utah, and they almost lost to Utah in the Holy War that I mentioned a little while ago. That was a bigger game for Utah, man, and BYU was a big favorite in that game, I think, and didn't do well and barely escaped in that game. So when a good team escapes like that, usually they show up with more intensity in the next game. The one thing I question is Texas Tech coming into the fray in this game as well. That's BYU's next opponent. And I mentioned that with Texas Tech as well. There's maybe a little bit of a look ahead for both of these teams, BYU and Texas Tech, because they have to play each other on Saturday. So that's a little bit of a worry. Maybe there's a little bit of a look ahead there, but I think the spot does set up a little bit better for BYU in this one. I would probably lay it, but the money is coming in on TCU. 50% of tickets, 67% of the cash on TCU. BYU is a 12-point favorite. I don't like this one anywhere near as much as I like Texas Tech, though. Texas Tech is like almost on my card. That's how good I think that game is. Against, yeah, because Utah just played such a crazy game. But that's going to do it. Those are my 4 plays there. We got a little bit of hockey and a little bit of NBA before I get out of here. Hopefully this won't take that long. Not a ton here. We have 4 hockey games, and I am on the first game. Best bets, baby. Here we go. I'm getting a kind of cool alternate Seattle jersey, by the way, from one of my Boston guys that's on Seattle. Don't have it yet, though, but we are going to be on the Seattle Kraken here. And I don't think I'll have the jersey to wear tomorrow if they do get it done. But We're going money line on this, plus 140. We're just going balls to the wall. We're going to do what Vegas Runner on Wager Talk says and just take the money line because points are for pussies, or in this case, goals are for pussies. Goals are for, what's a G word that's a synonym for pussy? I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But we're going to take the money line here. I consider doing a split bet puck line and money line here. You could do that too if you want to, but gets into that range. I think I was going to have to lay about minus 117 price combined on that. So I was like, all right, I'll just take the money line here. Now, really, this is mostly a fade of New Jersey, but I don't think the spot is bad for Seattle either because Seattle, yeah, they just beat the Rangers at Madison Square. That's usually a pretty big game, but they're staying in the New York, New Jersey area, man. And they're 1-1 on the road trip so far, so I think they will show up, and they'll show up for a game against a decent New Jersey team. The travel spot, as I'm going to show you in a second, is way better for Seattle, so I really like the fact that they're staying in the New York, New Jersey area for this. They should have Dakota back in net here, who is kind of their better goalie, although they've been alternating between the two goalies, so we'll see. But I don't think it's really, there's no drop-off, I don't think, between their two goalies. Now, for the Devils, I don't like the spot for the Devils at all, man. They're returning home from a road trip they've been on since last Tuesday. The Devils, well, they started in New York, so I don't know if that was really the start of the road trip or not. Technically, it was. And that was their awful 9-0 loss, by the way, at the Islanders, I should say. But then they did go on their true road trip Thursday in Pittsburgh, then went to Winnipeg, and then they finished the road trip finally getting a win, and a big win at Minnesota. So the Devils pulled off an upset at Minnesota to finish the road trip. Now, yes, you could argue that might end their losing momentum, and that's good, but I think it's bad because I see this more of a letdown. I see this more as a letdown spot because that was a big win over Minnesota. Plus, it's a return home spot from a trip, and you know I like to fade teams. It's my bread and butter, basically, man, in these daily sports, fading the team that returns home from a road trip because they have to get back to family life. They have stuff to do. They could be a little bit distracted. They might overlook a Seattle team that's really not that good. And, oh, yeah, who does New Jersey play next? They play the Carolina Hurricanes next, man. So I think it makes it a sandwich spot. That is a pretty intense look ahead to probably the best team in the East in Carolina. So this spot has Seattle written all over it for me. New Jersey has already dropped all the way from minus 170 to minus 140. So this line is on the move, man. Strong market read on Seattle. I would jump in on it. Just grab Seattle as the money line underdog. New Jersey's got 57% of the tickets on them. Seattle, 81% of the cash on Seattle. So, yeah. I think that plus 140 is going to wind up being a good price. It's going to be some closing line value, I think, because I think New Jersey might continue to plummet a bit. I don't know. Maybe they'll wind up being a little bit of buyback, but Seattle is the play for me there. Philadelphia at Buffalo is actually one of the televised games. There's a doubleheader on TNT and True TV and HBO Max. Philadelphia-Buffalo is the first game up in that doubleheader. It's an interesting game. It's a decent game. Philadelphia, they're on a losing streak here, man. They've lost 3 games in a row, but they lost 2 to Tampa Bay. Thought they would zigzag and get the second game. They did not. But now they're going out on the road. It's only a 2-game road trip. But sometimes when things aren't working for you at home, it's good to just leave. Go, just go somewhere else. Go out on the road. Focus on hockey. That's what Philly gets to do here. So it's a decent spot for them. They're playing Buffalo here. And Buffalo, I think the spot's a little bit worse for them. They're staying at home, but they're coming off a game against Florida where they only lost 4-3. Close game against Florida. If you look at what happened in this game, it was a 3-2 game late in the game. They gave up an empty net, and then Buffalo did score again at the end. But either way, it was a close game. It was a 1-score game. The statistics were pretty close in the game as well. So Buffalo's coming off that big game. They do have Montreal next tomorrow as well. Montreal has a pretty good record as well. So it is possible Buffalo actually even kind of overlooks Philly here just because Philly hasn't been playing well recently, although I don't know. Now, the last time Buffalo played Philly, they beat them in Buffalo. So Philly has the more recent revenge aspect to this, although Philly won the game prior to that, I believe, in Philly. I lean to Philadelphia in this game if that wasn't obvious. The money does agree with this one. If I was going to add any other hockey play, it would be this one. Flyers on the money line. This is my second favorite of the hockey plays. I really don't like the other games much at all. Buffalo down from -155 to -141 on the money line. 66% of the tickets are on Philly and 88% of the cash on Philly. So market agrees with Philly in that one. Ottawa at the Rangers. Oh, God, the Rangers get another home game. Rangers, we know they're really, really bad at home, as I always have to point out. Ottawa's coming into this off of breaking their losing streak. They had a 4-game losing streak, broke it by beating Vancouver. Now, I don't think they're going to be in a letdown spot after beating Vancouver, but Ottawa played yesterday, and they have to travel for a 1-game trip to Madison Square Garden. Then they're coming back home, so it is kind of a weird spot for Ottawa here. So I don't love that they have no time off and they have to travel from Ottawa down to New York for a game. New York is coming off a pretty embarrassing home loss to Seattle, man. And as bad as they are at home, you got to think that they're going to want to try to get something right here. They've lost now 3 more games in a row at home here. Because their actual last true home game prior to going on that long road trip that culminated in the Winter Classic, they did actually win barely against Philadelphia back on December 20th. So I think the spot sets up better for the Rangers in this game, man. Ottawa did go up from -105 to -115. 84% of the tickets and 88% of the cash on them. But it looks like Ottawa is going to be a public side. The Rangers now are, even not including overtime losses, they're actually below 500 now. So that might be a little bit of an extra motivator for them as well. But yeah, the Rangers are awful at home, 5-12-4. So that remains a thing where really it's really tough to want to play the Rangers at home, man. And then we have the last game of the doubleheader on TNT and whatever. Vegas at LA. Interesting game out in the Pacific time zone here. Vegas is coming off smashing San Jose on Sunday. Vegas is on a 4-game win streak. Now, when you're on a 4-game win streak like that, you don't really want to have 2 days off like Vegas has here. So that's a little bit of a concern that Vegas has a couple of days off here. Might break their momentum a little bit, although I don't really see them overlooking LA, although maybe Vegas will be a little bit overconfident after crushing San Jose. When you crush anybody 7-2, you might be feeling a little bit overconfident. LA is coming off a loss to Dallas. Now, that was a tough game against Dallas. They lost 3-1. You kind of have to dig into the box score and see how close was this game really. There was an empty net goal at the end, so this was a close game. It was 2-1 right near the end. So LA is coming off a pretty difficult game against Dallas, man. Staying at home, but they're going to have to put in that effort a couple games in a row. So it's a difficult spot for both teams, in my opinion here, man. Now, the money is slightly indicating towards LA. Vegas down from -115 to -113. 73% of tickets and 79% of the cash on the Kings. You know, I kind of disagree with it, though. I think the spot's a little bit better for Vegas. I think it's tough to come off that game against Dallas, man, although LA should show up for a game against Vegas. LA is also, as I said, they're like the Rangers. They're pretty bad at home, 7-10-5. So fading them at home is definitely something that is profitable this year. And Vegas has been fairly good on the road at 11-5-6. So, yeah, for me, I would probably slightly lean Vegas in that one. But you can see why I don't like those 2 games there. We'll finish the board here with NBA. Not too much going on here for NBA, but we have, whatever this is, 7 games. There is an ESPN doubleheader, at least. Toronto and Indiana is the first game up. Now, Toronto, they're coming off a loss to Philadelphia on an ESPN game. Philadelphia kind of zigzagged them. Now Toronto's going back out on the road for a single road game to play Indiana, but maybe that's good for Toronto. Just get out of home after you played a bad game at home. Go out on the road. I almost sang Daniel Powder again, but I won't this time. So I think the spot could be a little bit of a bounce-back spot for Toronto here. For Indiana, Indiana just beat the Celtics, man. So I could see this being a little bit of a letdown for Indiana, staying at home off that big win over the Celtics as an underdog. So I would slightly lean to the Raptors in this one, but the money I know is disagreeing on this one. Oh, no, it's not now. Never mind. 65% of tickets, 73% of the cash on the Raptors. Money is agreeing with it now. They're up from 2.5 to 2.5 with juice. I agree. I would lay it with the Raptors if I was going to play that game. It's not one that I have a strong enough opinion on, though. And I'm skipping the whole NBA board today. First ESPN game up is Cleveland at Philadelphia. Interesting game. Got to look at the injury report, although Cleveland seems pretty intact right now. And Philadelphia looks like Paul George and Joel Embiid are both supposed to play tonight as well. So I think they'll probably both be out there for this big game, ESPN game. So Philly should have a full lineup as well. But I think the spot is better for Cleveland. They're coming off that ugly loss to Utah. Not the Mammoth, though, the Jazz. So we got that win with the Jazz the other day. Cleveland was in a sandwich spot, I thought, man, between Minnesota and Philly. I'm pretty sure that was the game that we had the win on, right, with Utah, was it? I think so. Whatever it was, yeah, I believe it was. So Cleveland's coming off an ugly home loss, man, as a pretty big favorite. I think Cleveland was a double-digit favorite there, so I think the spot does set up better for Cleveland to bounce back off that horrendous loss. Philadelphia's coming off that zigzag win in Toronto, and they're actually returning home from a road trip, technically. Only been on the road since Friday, though, and they only went to Orlando and Toronto, so it's not like an extreme road trip return spot from like a long road trip or anything like that. And usually that handicap is, well, they're going to be distracted by returning home, but I don't think they're going to be distracted when they have Cleveland as their opponent and it's an ESPN game. And they replay this game on Friday, too, which is interesting. So might be a wait-and-see approach here and then see if you get a zigzag spot that looks good that sets up on Friday, although I know I don't play that many zigzag spots. But I lean to Cleveland in this game, though. The money seems to agree. The Sixers dropped from 3.5 to 1, and I don't really know why because it looks like their guys will be playing tonight. 54% of the tickets are on the Sixers and 70% of the cash on Cleveland. The market is telling you, with the line being at 1, that indicates that Cleveland is actually the better team, with the Sixers not getting full home court. And I agree with the Cavs in that one. Probably this is my strongest NBA opinion, actually, towards the Cavs, but I don't love it enough. Utah is at Chicago. I don't really like Utah in this spot, obviously, because they just pulled off that big upset that I just mentioned against Cleveland. So they could be in a little bit of a letdown here. Chicago is coming up playing Houston, though. That was a big game against Houston. So Chicago had a close game against Houston. They're winning that game, and that was last night, too. So I can't really jump in on Chicago here either, man. They're on a back-to-back off a huge game against Houston where they fell just short. Josh Giddey is still out. I believe Kobe White, is that his name, didn't play for Chicago last night. Kobe White? I apologize. I forget these guys' names, man. Whatever his name is. Kobe White. Yeah, I got it right. He didn't play, but I think it was, they called it injury maintenance, but it's really more, I think he just rested in that game against the Jazz. So, overall, I kind of wanted to lean to the Bulls here because the Jazz are in the worst. They're in that huge letdown spot, of course. And the Bulls at least did have rest before that last game, but the money is coming in on the Jazz. Bulls down from 4.5 to 3.5 here. 67% of the tickets on them. 67% of the cash, though, on Utah. So it is looking like a pros versus Joes scenario lining up towards Utah there. Although I had a slight disagreement with that just because Utah's in the big letdown spot. But, yeah, I can see the argument against Chicago because Chicago's in that horrible rest spot, and they're coming off that big game as well. So tough game to handicap. Brooklyn at New Orleans. I mean, this is a real ugly one. The ugliest game of the night. Brooklyn coming into this game on a 4-game losing streak. Playing a third game in 4 days in different cities, though, and actually a fourth and 6 all in different cities, which is not easy to do. But it is the last game of the road trip, and they've lost every game on the road trip. So maybe they will show up to try to salvage a game on the road trip. New Orleans is coming off a more difficult game here. They played yesterday, actually, and they played Denver. So they played a pretty tough game, even though it was Denver without Jokic. New Orleans played pretty tough in that game and only lost by 6, man. Staying at home here, I think you got to lean towards the Nets in this one, man. The money seems to completely disagree, though, but I don't understand why. I think this is one of the stronger NBA leans that I have here. I like the Nets in this one. They're up from 1.5 to 2, 61% of the tickets and only 55% of the cash on them, but I just don't see the argument for the Pelicans in that one at all. On the back-to-back plus coming off a huge game in that game, I don't like it for the Pelicans, man. But I guess the argument might be, well, the Nets shouldn't be favored by 2 on the road here against anybody. Like, I have seen the market basically has been saying New Orleans is a little bit better than their record looks, but I don't know. Second game of the doubleheader is Denver at Dallas, and I'm sure that when the schedule makers scheduled this game, I'm sure they did not envision Jokic and Anthony Davis both being hurt for this game, but that is what's going on here. We have neither guy playing in this game. Denver is coming off that close call against New Orleans, and they are on the back-to-back. Not a huge travel leg from New Orleans to Dallas, but still, it is a back-to-back, although you could make the argument that, well, Denver just sleepwalked through that game yesterday because they almost lost to New Orleans. They just didn't really show up. Yeah, I could definitely see that argument. So maybe they will show up for Dallas. Still, Dallas is coming off an easy game at home, though, against Brooklyn. Only won by 8, and they didn't play yesterday. So I think the spot sets up better for Dallas in this game. That is the way I would lean towards the Mavs. They flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1-point favorite, and it looks way too easy to take the Nuggets, right? Even without Jokic. Like, to me, I would think the public would be on the Nuggets here. Just, like, why wouldn't you be, right? Like, you're getting a point with the Nuggets here. They still have the better record. You wouldn't think anybody would really want to touch Dallas in a scenario like this. Although, I don't know. At least Dallas does have a winning home record, although Denver has been good on the road. But, yes, Jokic is still out. Davis, we know, is going to be out for a while. He's having to have surgery, I think, to repair his torn ligament in his hand. Jokic, I'm not sure when he's going to be back. But for some reason, the market read is pointing towards the Nuggets here, and I don't agree with it. Even though the Mavs initially moved to the 1-point favorite, 58% of the tickets and only 57% of the cash on the Mavs doesn't make any sense to me. We'll see if the market winds up agreeing with me later in the day, but I would only play the Mavs in that game if I was going to play it. The Knicks are at Sacramento. Knicks are coming into this game after beating Portland. They've had a couple of days off, so they're pretty rested. Doesn't look like a horrible spot to me for the Knicks. They play Golden State tomorrow, so will they overlook Sacramento just because they play Golden State tomorrow? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, it is still Golden State. It is still Steph Curry. I mean, they will gain more of your attention than the Kings will at the very least. But I do think the Kings are in kind of a bad spot. The Kings just had a pretty, I would say, satisfying win at home against the Lakers by double digits. Nice win for Sacramento. Now they're coming off a series of games. They beat Houston and the Lakers both by double digits at home. So there might be a letdown in store for Sacramento here, even though, of course, they shouldn't overlook the Knicks. The Knicks are good, but they're an Eastern Conference team. Sacramento's coming off 2 big wins for them. I don't know, man. It looks a little bit difficult of a spot here. I think the spot is better for the Knicks here. Schrader is still out with his suspension until the next game for punching somebody or whatever. Sabonis looks like he's coming back fairly soon, but not yet. Sacramento does have Levine back, as I mentioned. He's been back for a few games for what it's worth. I think I kind of lean to the Knicks in this game. They're up from 10.5 to 11, but the money is definitely disagreeing with me. 63% of the tickets are on the Knicks, so they're a public side, which doesn't surprise me, but 53% of the cash on the Kings. So the money is coming in on the Kings in that one, but I don't really agree with it. But I don't want to have anything to do with that game. And then Washington at the Clippers. Washington coming off 3 straight losses. They didn't even cover for us in what I thought was a good spot to fade the Phoenix Suns. Washington still didn't play well. Now they're just going from Phoenix to LA. They've had 2 days off to try to break this losing momentum. I think Washington at least will try to show up and try to win this game, man. We got to see what the Trae Young situation is for Washington, because I don't know if he's played yet. I'm pretty sure he didn't play in that game, because I would have liked Washington a lot less if he played in that game, if that was his Washington debut. The Clippers just had kind of a bad spot returning home from a road trip, finishing the road trip by beating Detroit. Nice win for the Clippers. They returned home and they still won and covered against Charlotte, though. I think the Clippers were like a 5-point favorite in that one, and they still covered in what was a bad spot. Now they're finishing their 2-game homestand. They do play Toronto next. Not sure if that's really going to be a look ahead, but how much attention do the Clippers really pay to Washington here? I don't know. I mean, the Clippers didn't have that great of a game in that game against Charlotte, so maybe they will be in that second game back home bounce back spot after not really playing that well in the first game, even though they did still cover. The money is indicating on the Clippers, for what it's worth, down from 13 to 12.5 here. 53% of tickets and 61% of the cash on the Clippers. So the money is saying Clippers, for what it's worth. Trae Young looks like he's injured, so he's still out. I don't think he's played yet. Yeah, he hasn't played since December 27th, so he's still injured. I thought the injury was just basically he was injured until he got traded away from the Hawks is what I thought. I thought it was a fake injury, but maybe he has to not play for the Wizards for a couple of games just to make it look like a real injury, man. I don't know, but he's not playing in the game tonight. He hasn't played yet for the Wizards, so not a factor in that game. I'll slightly lean to the Clippers as well, but I really don't have an opinion on that game at all. And that is going to do it, man. Once again, my plays for the day are 4 college basketball plays, BU, Boston University on the money line, or lay the 2.5 if it is up that high now. Louisiana plus the points, Southern Illinois minus the points, Virginia Tech plus the points, and then in hockey we have the Seattle Kraken money line. That is going to do it. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back, of course, as usual tomorrow morning, as long as I'm alive. Thanks to everybody for hanging out. Learn to Toad on Twitter. You can subscribe on Twitter as well. Helps me out. All the different ways that I can get any money help me out, man. So there is that. Yeah, and of course, we're on Instagram as well under Learn to Toad for the short form betting content. Like, subscribe, reply on the videos here on the channel. That helps me out. Boost this channel, baby. This jersey's a bit big, so it's all like lopsided on me, but I like the look of it, man. I like it a little bit oversized anyway. I don't want to be wearing a tight jersey, so I get the large. I'm not a big man, so I get the large. The large jerseys are a bit oversized, but I like it. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, like, subscribe, give me good comments on the channel here. Listen on audio, give me a good review over there. That helps me out as well with, yeah, it's on Apple and Spotify. And then we got Covered in Uke. Dude, I'm losing my mind. I apologize. Lack of sleep and whatever else. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube, so you can check that out as well. UkeTube is what we should call it. But Covered in Uke because I used to do drunk ukulele covers on there. Now I'm a sober man. It's all non-alcoholic beers, and I had one explode in my mini fridge there. I don't like that fridge. Like, the back panel of it, that's the cooling unit, is too close to the stuff in the fridge, and it can freeze over. But somehow it happened because the door wasn't, like, totally shut, and I don't know how that happened on the fridge. Anyway, whatever. I'm rambling. Covered in Uke, my Uke channel. Go check it out on YouTube. Patreon.com/LearnToToad, and you get some bonus stuff. All of the things help me out, man. And then Loser Cast. We had a new episode last night. I think I nominated a good choice for loser this week. We had a couple of doozies. One was probably pretty obviously going to be in the mix there for it, but you can go check that out. It was a fun episode again, as usual. That's going to do it for now, man. So I appreciate it again, everybody. Let's have a good day. Let's have a winning day again, because we've been in a bit of a lull here after we were really hot. Not off to a great start to 2026. We're kind of just treading water here so far. So slight loss so far, I think, on the year. So let's get back up, man. Can't keep a good man down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. All right, I think I do have a Uke cover of that somewhere, by the way. Maybe I'll redo it because it is fun to play. Peace, guys.